All right. Let's see. So this is the third theory on the exam. So you've got Rogers, person-centered. You've got Pearls, Gestalt for number two. This is number three. This is William Glasser, choice theory, um, and reality therapy. So uh, Glasser was a character. He died in 2013, but he was one of the few theorists that was alive that I could actually meet. Um, and he usually had a table next to mine, so if I was had a book at a ACA conference or something like that, Glasser, of course, he'd be the famous guy. Everybody go to his table. Uh, but he was very personable. And then his friend Wobelding would have like the next table over, and he'd be handing out like WDEP uh, pamphlets. And they usually went to conferences together if possible. And let's see. My professor studied uh, with Wobelding. Um, they went out one time. I'm not going to discuss that further. But uh, so, um, yeah, so I got a good dose of WDEP in my grad program. Um, but you know, I think personally, I think WDEP is a little simplistic. Uh, I think choice theory works really well with teens. Probably works good with everybody, but I really liked using it with teens that were having uh, problems with acting out or discipline or schools or things like that. And that makes a lot of sense because that's how Glasser formulated this theory. Um, so I think it works really well with specific populations. And you can use it with any population. I just think it works better with some than others. Um, and I think WDEP is very logical. People can understand it. But I also think it's simplistic. So, um, but yeah, Glasser was a character. Um, if I can't find it anywhere, there must be copyright issues, but just like Gloria had three sessions, uh, and so Glasser and quite a few other theorists had sessions with a woman called Linda. Uh, but those tapes are a lot harder to find. In fact, I was even going to buy them and I couldn't even find them to buy. But there are all kinds of sessions with Glasser. I just wasn't able to post them on our website because of copyright issues, but you can look on YouTube. I have a documentary on reality uh, therapy and choice theory that you can watch from our library. But if you want to see a counseling session, you can go to YouTube and look it up. Um, for the last like 20 years of his life, all he wore was Hawaiian shirts. That was his kind of claim to fame beyond his theory. He was so he wasn't like Pearls. His sarcasm was really funny, but he was really sarcastic. Um, but he was the kind of guy you liked to be around. Um, so let's see. Um, so educated Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, Ohio, originally. So I think this is why his whole theory is very logical and easy to understand. He started out as a chemical engineer. So, he had that, knack of thinking like that, very orderly and organized, but turned to psychology and then psychiatry, trained at the VA and UCLA and LA, lots of letters there. Uh, So rejected Freud's theory immediately, and originated reality therapy in 1962. So very basic premise of which is we are responsible for what we choose to do. It's almost like I heard that before. He just rephrased that a little bit. So that's, not highly original, but it does have the word choose in it. So we are products of our past, but not victims in the present. Very Adlerian. All problems are dealt with in the present, and relationship is stressed. So relationship and choices are really the two key factors in his theory. So I don't care about the other two theorists, but for Glasser, I'd probably recommend doing relationship for your session, just because that's the focus of his theory. So not really effective with extremely young children, but, good for parents. I used this in elementary school when I was an elementary school counselor. So I would say, second grade and up, that's pretty young to me. But the children have to be able to reason and understand the concept, basically. So they have to be old enough to do that. Glasser promoted education, worked a lot in schools, believed that success in school could help individuals overcome other issues. Consulted for a lot of years at Ventura School for Girls, California Youth Authority. This was my favorite theory to use, counseling children and young adults at CYS by far. One of my interpretations of this theory comes from his, I don't want to get too crazy here, but this theory he stole, which was basically control theory by William Powers. But hey, he gave him credit. He just renamed the theory. But I like the concept because I am giving control back to the client. And they liked that because they felt like they had no control in their lives. They thought authority figures and foster care and, CUIS were controlling their lives. And so I'm like, I'm going to, talk about what's in your control, because they felt helpless. Everybody else was controlling their lives. So they liked that about this theory. So Glasser looked at control theory first by William Powers, and he says he enhanced it and renamed it choice theory. Like, how to get away with that? Yeah, I thought it needed a better name. Come on. All right, 1998, he published Choice Theory, A New Psychology of Personal Freedom. This book became pretty famous. Before that, though, he published books about the same thing. He just like Rogers, he kept improving his theory. So probably the most famous book is Reality Therapy. Another book that a lot of school counselors like, Schools Without Failure. His most recent book was Warning: Psychiatry Can Be Hazardous to Your Mental Health. And of course, all the psychiatrists are like up in arms. And but they couldn't say, what do you know? You're not a psychiatrist. He was. So nobody could say that he didn't know what he was talking about. And I don't go to the same extreme that Glasser goes to, but yeah, psychiatry can be hazardous. I can't even tell you how many misdiagnosed clients I've dealt with. how many over-medicated clients I've dealt with. And, you know, so that can be harmful. How many people are diagnosed and given medication but not provided with therapy? So, yeah, America loves pills. All right. Glasser believed that the underlying problems of any emotional disorder are relationship. So either the client does not have a relationship or the client is involved in an unsatisfying relationship. He believes that's the most important thing. So reality teaches the client to behave in more effective ways, which will then facilitate more positive relationships. The therapeutic goal being to gain a satisfying relationship. So when I first started teaching this, just a little personal thing here, I had ended a significant relationship in my life, and I decided that, I went through this whole period in my life where it's like, rather than looking for a partner that's like the right partner, I decided that I had to be the right partner. And I had to learn to like myself and live with myself and give up control. It was like a life-changing period. And yeah, so I just lived alone for a number of years and worked on all me, basically. And look how wonderful I turned out. But yeah, and and it did lead naturally to a healthy relationship, which I'm grateful for. So yeah, I support that. But back then, I would say, oh man, I do not have a healthy relationship, and I'm not meeting this criteria. And then I'm like, well, but I do have healthy relationships. I have good friends, a nice support group, get along with my colleagues, I get along with my family of origin, and they were all healthy. I had worked on them already, and I just didn't have a significant other at the time. And but I don't know what counts, I guess I'm saying, as a healthy relationship. I don't know whether any healthy relationship counts. Back then it did for me. I found that helpful. I had a nice supporting environment, a group, community. But I think there is a difference, now that I have a significant other, I can say, yeah, there's a difference. But I'd start somewhere, start with some relationship, start with a house plant, move up to a cat, maybe a dog later, then, okay, maybe a significant other. All right. Let's see. So here's the biggest controversy. He doesn't believe in the DSM, any DSM. Back then it was a DSM-4. He doesn't believe in any DSM. And he goes to extremes with this. You don't have to focus on this to the same degree as he did. But, I would probably look at diagnosis a little critically. I personally would say that, not all diagnoses are valid. Not all diagnoses need to jump to medication immediately. Let's try therapy first. One thing that American therapists and psychiatrists don't do that Europeans do is they don't pair the DSM diagnoses with a severity scale. So let me give you an example that based on the criteria in the DSM, every child has ADHD. look at the criteria. But what Europe does is they match it with a severity scale. And that makes all the difference in that diagnosis. So what's the severity of the criteria? Same thing with bipolar. Same thing with depression. Three most diagnosed issues in America today. Three most medicated as well. Yeah, 90% of all medications used in America. Let's see. It's in our water supply. All right. So yeah, so I would just not jump to extremes, because the other side of that, I work in a psychiatric unit. I am 100% positive that a lot of diagnoses are legitimate and they need medication. Absolutely. It's a chemical imbalance. So I can say that without a doubt. So yeah, I'm not all one extreme or the other, I can say that, yeah, there's ADHD, there's bipolar, there's depression. They definitely need medication, Yeah.
So Glasser here is saying, like, from what I'm understanding, that there is no.
He's an extreme.
He's on the extreme of, like,
Yeah.
there is nothing. It's all a choice. Like, you choose to be anxious.
I choose to depress. Yeah. So that's an extreme. Yeah, I don't go that far.
Should we be that extreme in our test?
Well, you're not going to talk about medication or diagnoses, so you don't need to worry about it. You can use phrases like, you're choosing to depress. Yeah. But in your exam, I would really focus on WDEP. You can write the whole paper on just WDEP for the technique. All right. Okay, so he did use phrases like, I'm choosing to depress rather than I am depressed. So what he did was he moved it from a passive phrase, it's happening to me, to an active phrase, I'm choosing this. Now I can say that I have used this rephrasing with clients. But I'm not going to use it in a hospital setting where it's like a legitimate diagnosis. So we have to pick and choose when it's appropriate. He would use it all the time. I don't think it's appropriate all the time. So, boy, his view of human nature, he believes that humans are not blank slates, but they're born with 5 basic needs. So similar to Maslow, huh? Where'd he get these? Survival, love and belonging, power, freedom, fun. Come on. All right. When we ask ourselves, what's a successful life? We first need one successful relationship. And I read all kinds of studies, and it is much more difficult to find any kind of successful relationship in today's society. And all types of sociologists and social psychologists are examining this, because if you ask an adult, male or female, how many close friends they have very few by the time they are working professionals. Very few people that they would call a close friend. So for many reasons, it's becoming much more difficult to connect with other people on a deeper level. And, I think a lot of things come into play. I think that if you just look at I used to live in older houses, like I'd rent an apartment in an old house, and they would have porches and we'd all hang out on the front steps, talk to people walking by, and neighbors would stop by. And there's a sidewalk. But if you go to a suburb, there's no sidewalks. And you pull your car into the garage, and there's no front porch. There's a back deck. And there's usually a fence around the backyard. And it's lucky if you know who your neighbors are. And my kids, you know, what do they call the Generation X? I was Generation X. And you know, we were literally feral children, you know, and they had to remind our parents that they had children. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your child is? Oh, where's our kid? They should be home. So, you know, they had their own thing going on. Our parents were working. We'd have to let ourselves in, you know, make some food, watch some cartoons, get yelled at because we hadn't worked on our homework, watch our younger siblings. So now, you know, kids are behind computers or tablets or phones or playing video games, and so much of the socialization they get after school is through a headphone playing a game. Even when I walk around this campus, it used to be filled, you know, and we got the same number of students. It's just that people are inside, you know. So, you know, I think circumstances and environments have changed quite a bit. It's harder to connect on that deeper level, that human level with other people. So yeah, I think it's harder to have successful relationships today. It used to be, you know how old somebody is on whether they call you, they email you, or they text you. In fact, I call people, you know, I can only picture them like, why is he calling me? Why doesn't he just text me? Yeah. All right. So one of the more difficult things to understand is, well, first of all, these basic needs. If the survival needs are not being met in a client, you cannot move forward to emotions because they're in survival mode. If they're not getting their basic needs met, if they're struggling for food, shelter, clothing, all of those basic things, we can't move beyond that. We have to help them meet those basic needs. And then we can talk about what other needs are not being met. So if you think about it, you know, relationship is love and belonging. And, you know, I think that career is probably, so by power, I would call it like empowering, feeling empowered, you know? And I think a lot of times I've picked jobs because I really needed some money, you know? But that wasn't the same as having the freedom to choose a job I really enjoyed, you know? So yeah, I think that's probably part of Sam's problem with career. All right, so if we move to like some of the skilled teaching of choice theory, we identify those frustrated needs. We change one's choices and behaviors. Oh, what are some of your current choices that are not working for you? maybe we need to make a different choice. Sounds like I'm talking to my 6-year-old. The best way to get a 6-year-old to do something is to give them two choices that are both good. They feel empowered. You get one of the choices that you like. Would you like to clean your room now or after dinner? Would you like peanut butter and jelly or grilled cheese? So if we change our choices, hopefully we'll get a different result. That will lead to more satisfying needs, and we'll be rewarded with good feelings. We'll feel better. So that's kind of his process. So let's talk a little bit about the quality world. So the quality world is this place in our minds where we store memories of things or actions that make us feel good. My mind automatically jumps to addiction, but this is just about basic life. So it's based on our perceived needs. So there is a problem with this. A lot of times, things that make people feel good are not good for us. Things that make us feel good temporarily are not fulfilling in the long run. I've had a lot of relationships that were not healthy, that were not good for me. You know, so, I had to go through that period in my life. I had to make me healthy in order to have a healthy relationship. Yeah. Don't only date musicians, basically. That's what I learned. So, let's see. So quality world. So yeah, it's a place in our minds, and that place where, we store memories of good things, actions, things that make us feel good. We do have to talk with our clients and process some examples of those things in different domains of their life and kind of figure out whether those things are healthy for them, whether they believe they're healthy. I'm not going to judge, but we're going to process and talk about, do you find that meaningful? Is that healthy for you in the long run? Is that working for you? Does that memory, make you feel fulfilled and love? Or, was it satisfying in some other way that might not be so healthy? So yeah, so I just don't accept anything. We process these things in their quality world, and the client is able to filter, okay, I have all these things in my quality world. Some aren't so healthy. Some were very healthy. What's the differentiation there? If they figure out what's in their quality world or what was healthy and fulfilling, that steers them in the right direction for future healthy things. What wasn't healthy, that might be an indicator of poor choices they might want to change that aren't working for them. So another thing is it's often based on our perceived needs. So this is not from Glasser. This is just something I came up with a while ago. And it's basically needs versus wants. So I remember calling up my friend who was working at a stereo store. And I'm like, Tim, I really need a pair of Klipsch Heresy speakers. And I'm like, can you get them at a discount since you're working there? And he's like, Grafton, do you really need them or do you just want them? And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I really want them. Can you get them at a discount? But, so there is a differentiation between wants and needs. And a lot of what we pursue is a want and not a need. And we have to make that differentiation in the way we process our goals, our desires. Um, and, I tend to think that needs are more fulfilling than wants. So this also kind of leads to my concept of obsolescence. So one of the questions that Google would ask its engineers when they were interviewing them was, okay, the heating coil in this toaster is broken. How do you fix it? And 90% of the engineers will go into great detail about how to replace or fix that broken toaster coil, and none of them would get the job because the right answer was, your time is more valuable to me than fixing a toaster. You throw the toaster out and buy a new one and get on with your job. So, yeah. So when we think about the way we produce things and buy things, you know, my brother, he's a designer in New York City, and he's much more well off than I am. So, he hands down things to me. So I don't know, 15 years when I got married, I had his old television, and it was a giant television. It weighed 300 pounds. It had that big glass thing that, would cling when you hit it. And it was like, I don't know, giant, like 35 inches. and, uh, and after 5 years, my wife is like, why don't we get a big flat screen TV? They're cheap. And I'm like, because this one still works. And she says, so when this one breaks, we'll get a new one. I'm like, probably, yeah. I don't think we'll fix it. And although my parents used to fix their TVs, and I swear she left that TV on 24 hours a day for weeks until that tube burned out and we got a new TV. But, uh, so, but that's the difference. We used to repair things. We used to buy things that were quality that would last a long, long time. And they were so great that they were worth fixing. But now things are even built to be obsolete. And they're obsolete in two ways. They only last so long, and then they break down, probably right at the end of the warranty. Or a new product comes out that's just so great, you got to have that new product. Cell phones, I use the trickle down theory with cell phones. I got 6 people in my family. I can tell you, I've got a 16, my wife has a 15, 14, 13, 12. We've got every model for 6 years. And then we start over again. But the thing is, so those are the two ways that things become obsolete. And it's one thing to become obsolete and to dispose of something old when it's a material item. What about relationships? Yeah, we have applied the concept of obsolescence to relationships. People don't fix relationships. That takes a lot of work. And so we either separate or get a divorce. And besides, that new relationship is shiny and happy and new. It's everything the old relationship wasn't. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, unless it's planted over a septic tank. So the problem is, not only do we no longer put the same investment in relationships to fix when something's wrong, but we don't fix ourselves. And that's why we continue dating the same types of people, being attracted to the same unhealthy relationships, continuing the same cycle, dating musicians over and over again. So, we might have to fix ourselves. And if we find a healthy relationship, if something goes wrong, we might want to invest our time and energy into fixing that relationship rather than disposing of it. All right, that's just my little tangent. All right, reasons for suffering choices. People choose to suffer, he believes. I can tell you that's not true. Anger is an easy choice in a frustrating relationship, but it's not socially acceptable. Depressing and other symptoms restrain anger. Depression is a means to ask for help indirectly without begging or reducing our power. What's wrong? Really depressed. How can I help you? Depression and other symptoms allow us to avoid doing what we are afraid to do. Courage doesn't mean you don't have fear. Courage means you have fear and move forward anyway. Reality begins with the unfulfilling relationship or non-existent relationship, but does not focus on fault. Rather, it looks at what is within our client's control. So individuals have to take personal responsibility for choices. So existential. Complaining is not effective. Work with positive choices instead of complaints. I would say blaming is the same. Blaming does no good in therapy. Complaining does no good in therapy. Crying doesn't even do much good. That's why I use the 2 Kleenex technique. Somebody starts crying, I don't negate their emotions. I hand them 2 Kleenexes. They want more, they have to ask for them. I'll still give them more. But chances are, by the time they're done using those 2 Kleenexes, their crying's okay. They're ready to move on. Okay. So we do have some terms, rejection of transference. He doesn't really, he believes there is transference, but he's not going to play with it. He's not going to process it. He's not going to say, oh, we're experiencing transference. Let's unpack that. He's just going to put an immediate end to it. We're not going to go there. Just another way to avoid responsibility. Stays in the present. Past can't be changed. Sam's dad can't be changed. Sam's mom can't be changed. Old choices with jobs can't be changed. So we're not going to talk about them in the present session. We're going to talk about choices that could lead to positive change. Not focusing on symptoms, another avoidance behavior. Some of the possible questions he might ask: what are your current relationships like? What are your needs and goals? He's not asking about the past. Are they positive? Are they being met through your current behaviors or choices? He believes we have to create a positive counseling environment. We have to implement procedures that lead to changes in behaviors. So I wrote these techniques down because they're in Corey's book. Do not use them. The technique you're going to use for the exam, and you only need WDEP. It counts as 4 techniques. So you can use a couple of them in the session, and you can follow up in your future sessions. You can use all of them in your session with relationships. You can use WDEP in future sessions with job, career choices. So W, wants and needs. D, direction and doing. E, evaluation. P, planning and commitment. And then I included some handouts Wobelding gave me. And so there's a diagram of WDEP that you can follow for your exam. You don't have to go into all the little A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Just W, D, E, P, 4 things. Stick to the big letters. And then in the next one, there's an explanation of procedures and gives you examples. So you can take WDEP right from this sheet and apply it to SAM. And that's the answer to the techniques. All right. That is William Glasser. Questions, comments? Have you thought about any questions for the exam?